Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 255 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we'll be discussing chapter 29 of A Feast for Crows, which is named The Reaver.
And as always, we'll chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you, unless, of course, you have a Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tier that includes spoilers. Then we will spoil things for you. Regardless, we'll hopefully provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. That'll provide you with some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing all right. It was a fun sustainer call last night, huh?
Mm-hmm. I figured I was going to take some flack for this. Yes. To those considering whether or not to become a sustainer, sometimes Simon forgets that there's a sustainer call and doesn't show up until 30 minutes late. I am so sorry.
Oh, no. Hey, first of all, not sometimes. That was the first time you've ever done it. So, it's not a habit that you've made. And I was almost in the same boat. It was only...
Well, I accused you on the call of being the reason that I missed it because you didn't bother to remind me, but that's because you'd forgotten too, and then until you remembered in time, but
yes.
not enough time to get the message to me, sadly.
Yes, I remembered 30 minutes before the call, I saw something that reminded me of a discussion we had had once with our sustainers. And I was like, sustainers. Rush home. I was out with the dog. I dragged her back to the house.
But even briefly, it was nice to see them. They're a great bunch, and we have a good time.
Yes, it was a good time as always. I had my body skin check that I get annually, to make sure I don't have anything that the doctor deems...
Like regular doctor or dermatologist?
Dermatologist.
Dermatologist,
yes.
Okay.
The skin check to make sure there's nothing nefarious that the doctor feels should be removed. So I
have this too.
Yeah.
I'm a pasty white guy, and they check my skin too. Yes.
Stacey had hers done like 2 weeks ago, and we have the same doctor doing the same check. And she told Stacey, "You're just so easy. Your skin is so flawless." And
I bet she liked that.
Yeah. No one would dislike that. Oh, your skin is too flawless. But I make her work for her money a couple weeks later. So, we average out. I told her that yesterday. But, I'd been wondering, because I'm follically challenged, I've been wondering, is there shampoo and conditioner that I should be using as a bald man? And so I tried Googling it and didn't really get very useful results. So I figured I'm with my dermatologist. Why don't I ask her? So I asked her about it, and she gave me a particular shampoo that she recommended. But then for conditioner, she said, "I don't think you should be using conditioner." And she explained how conditioner is for hair, that how it kind of fortifies hair and stuff, which is not really an issue for me so much.
Mm-hmm. I mean, my God, what's there needs fortifying. That's true.
She said I should be using lotion. So she gave me she said just use, because I have sensitive skin, a sensitive skin fragrance-free lotion. So the past 2 days, I've been rubbing lotion onto my head. It's a whole new experience.
It's quite the image you're conjuring, Mackelly. And how is it going?
My hands feel a little greasy, but so I certainly can't let what I have grow out very long, or I'm afraid it's going to take on a bit of a sheen. But I don't know. The jury's still out on that.
Yeah. You and I are very different in this respect. I don't have these problems.
No, you don't.
Yet,
no.
Touch wood.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating to know how the other half live. Yeah.
I always wondered, I was like, why am I using conditioner that I put in and then I wash out? Wouldn't it make more sense if I put something on my scalp that would, stay there and permanently moisturize it?
Not to try and claim the sort of intellectual high ground here, but I wouldn't have been using conditioner. I have hair and I don't use conditioner,
Oh.
so I can't imagine taking it off if the hair were to disappear.
Well, when you've got an exposed scalp, you don't want it to be like red and dry and, and stuff.
I suppose so. Yeah. I guess so.
It needs to stay moisturized. Anyway,
Well.
I'm sure we put half our audience to sleep, and the other half is going to complain about 7 minutes of drivel or whatever.
The other half were just revolted by the very thought of it all.
So,
I have quite a funny story from not the Sustainer call. I didn't show up for that one. From the family call
yes.
This weekend. So my mother her hearing is going, and she has new hearing aids, and apparently they're really good, but she clearly wasn't wearing them on Sunday. And she's technically challenged with the call. If anything goes wrong on the call, she really doesn't know how to salvage it.
Right.
Basically, she's been given like a desktop shortcut to trigger this call.
Okay.
And that's it. That's all she's got.
Yeah.
So when she's not wearing her hearing aids, she relies very heavily on the closed captioning, which is sort of auto-generated from what people say.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sure that never misfires.
It misfires, but generally speaking, it gets her the sense of, because she can hear, but sort of like reconfirms what she heard.
Yeah.
It definitely helps, although it does create a sort of delay because the subtitles come through a little bit after the voice.
Right.
So she's a little slow to respond, but she kind of enjoys it because she's sort of, you see her reading while the rest of us are sort of making jokes and things, and she seems like she's enjoying it. But the subtitles weren't on when she started the call. And so we spent a lot of the time of the call trying to get her to hit the button, which had the letter CC in a little box.
Yep.
All she had to do was hit that button. And as I always tell her, an odd number of times, because I'm sure she double clicks it, turning it on and then back off again.
1, 3, 5, you just not...
Any of those numbers will work, but 2, 4, 6, that ain't cutting it.
No.
So we talked her through it, and you could see she was working on it, and the rest of us carried on talking kind of thing. And about 5 minutes later, my sister went back to my mum and said, "Hey mum, have you got the subtitles working?" And she said, "What?" And she said, "Have you got the subtitles working?" Getting louder. My mum was like, "Have I got the what?" My sister at this point is yelling, "Subtitles!" And my brother is like, "I think we can all read the room here." No, she doesn't.
No. Either she doesn't have them on, or she's really just messing with your sister. One or the other. Yes, of course I have them on.
Yes, this tickled us all. All right, well, let's get down to business. How did we leave Victarion, the eponymous Reaver of this chapter? Well, the last we saw of Victarion Greyjoy, he was making his case to be the king of the Iron Islands at the Kingsmoot. He was the leading candidate entering the day and had the blessing of his brother the Damphair. His niece Asha put up a better showing than he'd expected, but his brother Euron won the day with an abundance of treasure, the promise of dragons, and the taking of all of Westeros. Euron punctuated his campaign pitch with the blowing of a dragon horn. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
And we should specify, Euron didn't actually blow the horn. Because in this chapter, we find out what happens.
You find out that was a bad idea.
Yes. Well, Victarion watches on deck as his iron victory rakes an enemy ship. Half his boarding party loses their feet in the collision, but not Victarion. He jumps onto the enemy ship alone. Men shout to attack the lone raider, and Victarion welcomes their advances. Despite attacks from every side, Victarion slices and slashes through the lightly armored men wearing white rose sigils.
Soon his fellow Ironborn join him on the enemy deck, and the carnage intensifies. Victarion sees the ship's captain across the deck. The man identifies himself as Sir Talbot Serry, heir to his lord father. The men meet in single combat, and Victarion is impressed by Serry's quickness. After a mostly even fight, Victarion knocks Serry overboard. Victarion then rejoins the chaos of blood and gore on the ship.
This is what Victarion was born for, not eloquent speeches at King's Moots or dealing with Crannog men in the never-ending bog. When the battle ends, the deck is slick with blood. Around these entangled ships, the sea is full of other ships, many burning or sinking. The water is full of men, dead and alive, and debris of a sea battle. The day was Victarion's. He'd lost 6 ships while taking 38 from the enemy. However, he knows the men will shout his brother's name. Euron had won them with plunder from faraway lands, and now he's given them victory.
Obedience is a natural trait for Victarion. He followed his brother Balon and prepared himself to follow Balon's sons. However, the thought of calling Euron king was more than he could stomach. Back aboard the Iron Victory, Victarion retires to his cabin. His woman awaits him. She was a gift from Euron, one Victarion tried to reject until Euron said that he would kill the woman if Victarion did not take her. So he did. And he took her twice now in quick succession, after she washed and bandaged a wound on his hand from his battle with Sir Talbot.
The woman has no tongue, so Victarion feels safe venting to her. He admits that Euron's plan was solid. He sent a small group of longships up the Mander to draw the attention of the defenders. While they were busy chasing the longships, the main force of the Iron Fleet blocked the river's mouth, and the Shield Islands, used for a long time as a guard and sentry for the Mander, fell to the Ironborn. With this victory, the Mander is clear sailing for them, as it was thousands of years before.
Victarion ponders kin and kinslaying. What if it wasn't by his hand, only at his command? Would the drowned god still be wroth? His younger brother Aeron would know, but he's gone missing. Victarion recalls after the King's Moot how Aeron pleaded with Victarion to throw down Euron and claim the Seastone Chair. Victarion said Euron won fair and square, but Aeron said that Euron's wizards cast a spell preventing the drowned god from being heard.
Since that day, Aeron has gone underground. His parting words were that he'd raise an army of small folk to rise up and smash Euron and his supporters. Asha should have given Victarion her voice at the King's Moot. She had no hope of winning. She too fled after the King's Moot. Victarion hopes she finds a man on the Greenland and never nears the sea again.
Victarion makes his way to Lord Hewitt's town on the island of Oakenshield. Dead litter the streets, and the castle has fallen to the Ironborn. Victarion sees a line of women and children bound and being marched onto a ship. They will be sold as slaves. Victarion is incredulous. The Ironborn do not sell slaves. They take thralls, but those are won, and their children are born free.
In the castle yard, Roderick the Reader, Harlaw, makes his feelings known. All we've won are some stones and the anger of House Tyrell. Soon the power of the Reach will come for retribution. The idea actually excites Victarion. He'd love to try his axe against the Kingslayer or the Knight of Flowers. Roderick says he might get his wish. Euron allowed Lord Hewitt to send his ravens.
Inside the castle, a feast was raging. Women in fine dresses served and poured. Victarion is surprised to learn that they are Lord Hewitt's wife, daughter, and good daughters from ages 25 to 10. Only Hewitt's bastard daughter Thalia is spared the humiliation. She sits on Euron's lap, presumably a different type of humiliation.
Right.
Seems that she was treated as a servant by her family, so Euron has turned the tables. Euron has the women strip on Thalia's suggestion.
Euron delivers a speech to his men. This is but the first morsel of what he's promised. But it'll take strong men to hold these islands. He then names 4 men as lords of the 4 islands, including Victarion's right-hand man Newt the Barber. Victarion sees what Euron's doing. He's taking the strongest allies of his greatest threats. Euron then announces the plan. Soon, all who are able will sail to Essos and return with dragons.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
Roderick questions how long they will be gone. 3 years? 5 years? The journey will be long and dangerous. At best, a third will make it across the narrow sea, where they will find no welcome in Essos. The men agree. They want to find dragons of the golden variety and wine, which are plentiful in Highgarden, Old Town, and the Arbor. Euron takes Thalia and leaves the hall.
Victarion is pleased to see that Euron's grasp on the Seastone Chair is a bit weaker than he thought. A tap on Victarion's shoulder indicates the king wants a word, so Victarion leaves the hall.
He finds Euron in Lord Hewitt's bedchamber, Thalia naked and asleep in the bed. Euron had miscalculated the Ironborn's ability to see the bigger picture. They want plunder, not world domination. He also concedes that Roderick is not wrong. The whole fleet is too large for that long of a voyage. It must be just the Iron Fleet.
This is also when he mentions that Kraegorn, the man who blew the dragon horn, died with charred lungs.
That's true, yeah.
Forgot to put that in the summary, so there's another nugget there. Anyway, Euron offers Victarion shade of the evening and tells of how he captured 4 warlocks out of Karth who told a curious tale. He wants Victarion to sail to Slaver's Bay and bring back his wife. The Kraken will wed the dragon. When Euron takes the Iron Throne, the sea stone chair will be Victarion's. Victarion agrees to the journey, however secretly he plans to woo and win the woman, not for his brother, but for himself. You stole my woman, so I'll take yours.
Yep. So, yeah, we definitely see Victarion in his natural habitat here. He says it himself. He wasn't born from making speeches at the King's Moot, which it's a good job, given how badly he failed.
Right.
So, but as a Reaver, he is top notch. You would not want to face him.
Right.
I would row hard in the opposite direction if the Iron Victory.
I would be rowing right next to you in the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
It's a problem not just when you're talking about King's Moots to promote a King of the Iron Islands, but I think universally there's an issue with being promoted out of your primary skill set.
Wow, very true. Very true.
We see it a lot in daily work life. You see people who were really great at their, really experts at what they do, and then they get promoted to manager or something like that, and that's just not. Yeah, it's a different skill set entirely. And,
and to a certain extent, Euron has it, because he definitely has sort of like the vision thing that you want from your leader. He is a lunatic. But he apparently they sometimes go hand in hand, But yeah, Victarion definitely would be ill-suited. He'd be like Robert. He'd be like, if he sat the Sea Stone Chair, he'd be like Robert on the Iron Throne.
I thought of that. I thought of the similarities between Robert and Victarion.
Born for battle and, and the quest to achieve it, but not for the actual ruling once you get there.
Yeah, the next thought he has is that obedience comes naturally to him, which is not necessarily in line with Robert in that aspect. I don't know that Robert was known for his obedience. In some ways, being obedient is a good gift for leadership. As a leader, your primary job is to work for your people, to do what's, make decisions that benefit the greater good, not oneself, which is a lesson our current Queen Regent could learn. But too much obedience, you become a puppet of whoever you're being obedient to.
Yeah, I think also there's a difference here between Victarion being the third son and Robert, who was always the eldest, right?
Right, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
So Robert always expected to lead, and Victarion always expected to follow, to have people above him telling him what to do.
Yeah, he even tells us in this chapter that he basically was born following Balon's lead. Whatever his older brother was doing, he was there supporting him. And he had prepared himself to be obedient to Balon's sons. But he thinks that, he was born to reeve from the deck of a ship, and I don't think he's alone there, which is probably a good example of why the plan for Northern takeover was doomed from the beginning. Is there's few Ironborn that are comfortable or skilled enough at land battles, or just living life in general so far from the sea as you would need if you were taking over the entire North, I think.
I'll say that if Victarion came running at me with the battle fever on him on land, I wouldn't think to myself, well, there's a Kraken who doesn't know what he's doing.
Well, I've got the upper hand here.
Exactly. Because I don't have to row to get away, I can run.
Yes, that's right. But it was.
But I do take your point. Yeah. They are certainly skilled at sea battle more so than like, I'm sure they're the weakest horse riders.
They are.
You know?
Yes. Theon mentioned that in his chapter on Pike. It's how he ended up with his horse Smiler, because he was the only one that could ride a horse that was so willful.
Yeah. So the woman that Euron gives to Victarion, we don't know much about her, but the physical description and her passive demeanor and her tonguelessness doesn't suggest this, but that's part of the description, suggests that she might be from Narth.
Yes. Yeah.
Why so? What makes you think this?
Because they're described as having dusky skin, and they are known by slavers to make the best slaves. So, the fact that she's passive could be the fact that she's helpless.
Right.
Or it could be the fact that she's passive because she's Nathi, and they're rather passive slaves.
So all of this action is taking place at the mouth of the Mander. The Mander runs from near King's Landing all the way across the Reach. So this is sort of like the main waterway of the Reach, basically.
Right.
Is that right? It is wide, slow, and treacherous with snags and sandbars, but the Ironborn's fleet, the Ironborn's ships, have a very low draft. They are kind of like Viking longships, which were also known to have they weren't very deep in the water, so they could sail shallow rivers safely, and so that helps them at this point.
Yeah, and honestly, at the moment, the snags and sandbars and the slow flow of the Mander, all of it might not necessarily be the case, because at least in the Riverlands, it has been raining a lot to the point where the Trident is overflowing, and
that's true.
So, with so much rain, you imagine that the Mander would be running high as well, which would lessen these issues with snags and sandbars. But it also made me think that the flow would be flowing very strongly
against
sea,
you, yes.
Which would make it really hard to make headway upriver. So
although I don't know. That is true if the river doesn't burst its banks, because if the river is maintained in its banks, then more water per second has to come through.
Yes,
but if the river floods over, it can keep going at the same sedate pace.
I take your point. Yes, that makes sense. So the plan that Euron laid out is that, we mentioned it in the summary, they're going to send 12 boats upstream, which will draw the defenders out of the Shield Islands. They will chase those 12 boats. Then the main force arrives at the Shield Islands, where there now are insufficient defenders to protect the islands, and the Iron Fleet was blocking the mouth of the Mander from the ships that are eventually turn around and come back. They're there waiting for them. So
yes, or if you're right about the flow of the river, they're just like 50 yards up ahead, desperately rowing to stand still.
the 12 longships of the Iron Border are only like 100 yards ahead of them, and nobody can get anywhere.
They're on the bank being carried.
Yes. And Victarion admits that it's a good plan. Taking the Shield Islands opens access to sail the Mander. But I think Roderick the Reader has the more right of it. Yeah, when he says, we've taken a few rocks, but pretty much all we've done is just angered Highgarden.
Right. And Highgarden can be there very quickly down the fast-flowing Mander.
Right, yeah.
Should they wish to be.
Now, likely, he doesn't know that much of Highgarden's force is currently sieging Storm's End. And he mentions Randall Tarley. He definitely seems he doesn't know that Randall Tarley is across all the way on the east coast of Westeros at Maidenpool.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
So the Shield Islands were obviously they're sort of like a physical protection for the mouth of the Mander, but you could sail around them. They're not like they're not like the ghosts in Pac-Man chasing you.
Right.
They are rocks.
Right. Yes.
But they are the guard and sentry because they actually use fires to alert habitations further along the Mander. And this chain of fires sort of like alerts everybody. So getting rid of them, taking them and preventing that from happening does make raiding up the Mander a lot easier, for sure.
Yeah.
Although pretty much once they've fallen, you're going to be on high alert forevermore against the Ironborn, I would think.
Yeah, I've got a lot of issues with this plan that I will get to, but one of them is that Euron let Lord Hewitt's ravens fly. So assume at least one of those is going to be to Highgarden saying, "Hey, we're under attack from the Ironborn."
Well, he doesn't lack for confidence, Euron. That's
no,
for sure.
He doesn't. I feel like the Ironborn in general lack for thinking things all the way through. A bit of short-sightedness. And speaking of short-sightedness, did the Red Wines keep no force at home, even knowing that Balon Greyjoy proclaimed himself king? I would think with such rumblings like that coming from the Iron Islands, who are known to reave the west coast of Westeros, you might keep enough of a force at home to deal with such an attack.
I agree with you, but can I remind you of the statistics of this particular battle? We got the Reaver's perspective of this battle, Victarion's perspective, and it was just him jumping onto one ship, but they actually captured 38 ships.
You're right. That's a significant. Losing 6 nothing. And taking 38, that's a lot.
Yeah. So I get your point, but I think they did, and this was the battle that eliminated that force that was left behind to protect the Reach.
It could be. Yeah, I think this particular battle was just the Shield Islands battles, but or Shield Islands ships.
The Shield Islands managed to have 38 ships. I mean, that's just the captured ones. There were plenty sunk as well, right?
Yes, you're right. Absolutely, yeah.
My vision of these Shield Islands is completely different. They are, in fact, huge shipbuilding islands. That's all that goes on there.
Maybe they're little ships. They're just little dinghies. Just like 3-person dinghies that are being rowed out there.
You captured 38 ships. Here they are in my pocket. Yeah, but I take your point. The Red Wines wouldn't be that foolish, but maybe this chapter justifies they really weren't that foolish. There was enough force left behind. They thought enough force had been left behind. It proved insufficient because of Euron's.
You're right. I mean, the Iron Fleet, the Ironborn are supposed to have one of the largest fleets in Westeros. So if they brought their entire flotilla down upon the Shield Islands, and the Red Wines didn't keep a significant amount of force at home, they still might not have enough, even if they kept what they thought was a sufficient amount at home.
Yeah.
Because, just to clarify, the rest are making their way to Dragonstone.
Yes, indeed.
And they're getting
So Euron's plan is to sail for Marine to propose to Dany. That seems to be who he's talking about.
Something like that, yeah. I'm not sure how that proposal will go, but it's his plan to woo and marry her, I guess.
But Roderick, the reader, ever the voice of reason, points out a few flaws in that plan. That they've got 1,000 ships that they could leave with today, but that kind of journey, which is fraught because he says, they've got to go all the way around Dawn, and Dawn is inhospitable, and there's nothing to plunder, and you can't resupply there either. Then you've got to get across the narrow sea in the autumn when the storms fire up, and then you land in Essos, where you won't be welcomed either, especially if a bunch of the 1,000 survived the journey. You will look like an invading force.
Right. And later Euron will admit that this was a miscalculation on his part, and that he must stay and Victarion must go as his envoy. And then that's when they get into a discussion about how he also miscalculated the Ironborn's interest in such things, that they're not interested in fantasy of dragons in far off lands. They're interested in the realistic treasure trove in front of them, which is Highgarden, Old Town, and the Arbor, as we mentioned in the summary. Raiding is what they know, not long, dangerous journeys to find mythical dragons. So,
especially if Roderick's calculations are sort of roughly in line, because basically you've got a 70% chance of drowning if you go on this journey.
Right.
70% chance of drowning just so the new king can get a pretty wife. It's like,
and the dragons. Don't forget about the dragons.
Oh, well, okay, but I don't believe in dragons.
Right.
I heard a loud horn, but that doesn't make me believe in dragons.
Yeah. This is where I will discuss, just in my opinion, the short-sightedness of this entire plan. The original plan was to leave for Essos with basically the entire Ironborn force. He said,
Right.
Anyone, even the injured, who aren't so injured that they can make this journey, will come with us. So who is left at home to defend the Iron Islands and the Shield Islands? It's only a matter of time before the Tyrells sort out what's happening and respond in some way.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe the Iron Islands are safe, because why would you bother invading the Iron Islands? But you're right, they'll take the Shield Islands back for sure.
Well, here's why the Iron Islands aren't necessarily safe for Euron anyway. If he's gone for a year plus, which seems very likely, at least a year that he'll be gone, it will give his brother Aaron Damphair time to truly raise an army, possibly.
That's very true. That is very true. But let's look at it from the other side. If he's learned intel about Dany, he's learned she's pretty and has dragons. But there are other things that you might learn about Dany, that she has a force of 6,000 unsullied.
Right. Yeah.
That she has a Khalasar of thousands of hungry mouths to feed. He might need 1,000 ships to bring them all back.
You're right. Yeah. And if he can make it over there, in his original plan, if he makes it over there, she actually might be enticed by the idea of having all these ships to return.
Whereas if 4 ships arrive, she's like, well, that doesn't really help me, does it?
Right. Yeah. Even if a lot, but not enough ships arrive, she's
right. Absolutely.
The sailors are already on the ships. Then they're going to add, tens of thousands of unsullied.
I will say
the rest.
Clearly, these ships have got capacity, because they're constantly driving cattle and people onto these ships.
Well, yes.
So they are planning to have others on board.
So here's
I think it's got to be that, because otherwise, I agree with you. Even if he charms Daenerys, which Euron doesn't seem particularly charming to me, but it doesn't help her cause. But what does help her cause is 1,000 ships that could take her entire Khalasar back to Westeros.
Yeah, I think that would at least pique her interest.
Yeah.
But so if he planned all along to sail in total force, then why would he let those ravens fly? Because surely they're alerting Highgarden to the events that just happened in this chapter. And, there's nothing but a token force to hold these Shield Islands. Possibly that was part of the plan, to get these rival men killed when they can't hold.
Leave them behind as sacrifices to weaken your internal enemies.
Right.
And also be a complete head fake, get the attention of the Tyrells pointing where you're not going to be.
Yeah, that could be. We don't really get any more beyond what this original plan was, to take the Shield Islands. But now he's staying. So is now he regretting alerting Highgarden?
Well, he's not going. He's not necessarily staying.
Well, right. He might return back to the Iron Islands.
Yeah. But I will say there's a perfect contrast here between Euron's strategic thinking and Cersei's. What's the first thing he does with a success? He gives laurels to people who on the surface, he's trying to court because these are people who were not completely behind him. And so he's actually sort of like saying, hey, look, I'm reaching out an olive branch to the people who didn't want me to be king and giving them rewards for the things. But simultaneously, he's undermining them by giving them slightly poisoned chalices and spreading his enemies thinner.
Much better thought out manipulation than Cersei's bull in a china shop straight ahead thinking.
Exactly.
But then Cersei doesn't have warlocks at her disposal, so
that's true. So talk to me about the warlocks then. So tell me about the warlocks. So Euron found these wizards when he raided a ship, and he found a barrel of the
Shade of the Evening.
Shade of the Evening, which he now drinks copious amounts of. Who were these warlocks that he found?
Well, so we had discussed in spoilers that, we just discovered now, I'm pretty sure we just discovered in this chapter that he had these warlocks. But, we had mentioned it in spoilers that this was coming, and now the blue lips get explained because we had surmised and talked about the possibility that he has blue lips. Why does he have blue lips? Maybe he's drinking Shade of the Evening.
Right.
Now, according to A World of Ice and Fire, Pyat Pree from the Dany chapters from Karth is one of the three warlocks that we mentioned in the summary that he took 4 captive, but one of them threatened him, so he killed them and fed him to the other 3.
Fed them to the 3, yes.
So that's why I'm saying 3. The Pyat Pree is one of the 3. And he also claims that he got the dragon horn in Valyria. However, also according to A World of Ice and Fire, it says that he got the dragon horn from the warlocks. Which puts into question whether, Roderick the Reader also under his breath questions, did you really sail to Valyria? So, that it just puts more fuel on that fire.
But this is partly the source of his power because he's got these warlocks working for him. It's also partly the source of his madness because he's drinking the. You have to remind me what the drink is called again.
Shade of the Evening.
He's drinking the Shade of the Evening. But it also explains where he got his intel about Dany from.
Yes,
right?
And that exactly, yes.
That's the key point here.
We're on the same line of thinking there.
Pyat Pree literally knew all about Dany and her dragons.
Yeah, and he tells Victarion that the warlocks told a curious tale. I'm guessing that curious tale is about Dany, which is why he brings it up when he's talking about Victarion getting Dany. But so does that mean that the warlocks were sailing with this dragon horn on their way possibly to Slaver's Bay? Maybe with a plan to steal the dragons from Dany?
Oh. But then if that was the case, wouldn't you try to buy your freedom there and then with him?
Yeah, unless he doesn't buy it or some reason he wants to keep you captive while he...
But think what he did instead. Instead of going straight to her and binding her dragons with this horn, he's going to sail halfway around the world to win the Seastone Share, to sail back again with 1,000 ships, and then do it.
Yeah, if you believe that he killed Balon, then why not just let Balon continue to rule while you do what you're already going to do while you're over there near Slaver's Bay, part of the world, and then have Balon killed.
If you march in and bind the dragons with your horn, is Dany going to refuse you because you're the second son? Wait, hang on, you got an older brother? Get out of it.
Well, the whole thing about the warlock sailing with the dragon horn does give some legitimacy to Euron's claim that the horn does bind dragons. Because if the warlocks had it and they thought, we're going to go steal Dany's dragons, maybe it does.
Somebody claimed it sometime.
Right. Yes. Until it's proven, it's just theory.
Exactly. All we know about it is it's dangerous to blow on.
Yes. Yes, poor Cragorn learned that the hard way.
Uh-huh. So Victarion thinks about kinslaying, and he wonders if the drowned god would forgive him if he sort of gets around it, if there's loopholes in the law where he could just get someone else to do it for him. It does seem that the more devout and holy Aaron Damphair Greyjoy, he doesn't have any inhibitions about this. He thinks he'll get away with it scot-free.
Yeah, I believe he feels like Euron cheated in the Kingsmoot and used the warlocks or wizards, as
and
they
he's
call
not
them.
a righteous man.
Right, and that is his biggest issue, is that his belief and behaviors are going to bring the wrath of the drowned god down upon the Ironborn in general. So Victarion thinks, oh, if only I could consult Aaron on this. He would know whether kingslaying by proxy counts. But like we were just saying, I feel like we have Aaron's answer. He had a line in this chapter when Victarion's thinking back about his conversation with Aaron, where Aaron says, I will rip the crown off Euron's head and put it on yours. You're the only one strong enough to fight him. If you won't remove him from the sea stone chair, I'll do it myself. So I think we have the answer of what he thinks of this whole kingslaying and kinslaying situation.
But there isn't necessarily death involved in those things. I mean, probably there will have to be, but right. Aaron isn't saying that. You're just inferring it.
Correct. Yes, I am inferring that he's going to have to kill Euron to get the crown off his head.
And we didn't mention this in the summary, but it was mentioned that after the Kingsmoot, Baelor Blacktide was killed for his refusal to accept Euron as king. Now, you talked me through this in spoilers after the Kingsmoot, as I recall.
Oh, yes, I think we did.
And he was cut into 7 pieces for the gods that he worshipped, which is pretty unpleasant. He was the one who liked Asha, right?
Yes. First he came to Victarion and said, or will you end the war if I vote for you? And Victarion, remember, his plan was, I'm just going to keep doing what Balon started. And so he said, okay, well then I'm backing Asha.
Yeah, ever the foot soldier.
Yes, and Victarion capturing Baelor is the loyalty to Euron that earned him the Dusky Woman.
I see. Okay.
So, and how Baelor ended up worshiping the 7, just as a quick reminder, he was taken hostage and held for like 8 years or something in Old Town. And over those 8 years, he converted to the faith of the 7. And he also fostered Christopher Botley, who was Asha's friend, childhood friend.
Oh, I was mixing up Baelor Blacktide with Christopher Botley. That's who I was thinking of.
Okay. Yes, they had had some ties there. Christopher was ward to Baelor.
Right.
And so he was tired of the pointless deaths in all these wars, and he just wanted it to end. And Asha was willing to do that.
So other fallout from the Kingsmoot, that Aaron's gone underground, as you mentioned, but Asha's gone missing as well. Victarion, has a soft spot for her. I think they all kind of have a soft spot for her, their niece, Asha.
Yeah.
He hopes that she marries someone on the mainland and never comes back to the sea. On some levels, I want that for her too, but I also want her to fight for her corner because she's a good character, Asha.
She is, but I probably, my fears are probably Victarion's fears, that if she stayed on the Iron Islands or if she returns to the Iron Islands, she's probably not long for this world if she runs her mouth the way that she does with Euron as king.
Yes, Euron doesn't take dissent very lightly, it seems.
And she already outright accused him of killing her father. So, at the very least, Euron was going to marry her off to someone to ensure that she is a wife and not a threat to be queen of the Iron Islands.
Yeah. Lord Hewitt and his family are treated abominably. I'd like to point the finger at Euron here, but honestly, this is what the Greyjoys do. This is what the Ironborn do. It's hard to imagine how they survive any of this, unless they're kept as hostages, perhaps.
Right, and that was.
But since they're lords of the Shield Islands, they don't have much apart from that enormous shipyard spitting out hundreds of ships every year.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it does seem unlikely that they will survive. I guess. I mean, you can't. How are you? The only way they would work as hostages is if the Tyrells cared enough about their well-being that they won't attack the castle while the Hewitts are being threatened.
Whenever that happens, I have a card that I like to play, which is called Roderick Cassel.
Yes, right.
If Roderick Cassel will attack Winterfell, then the Tyrells are going to attack the Shield Islands.
Yes, you're right. They're not going to let one family stand in the way. That's very, very unlikely that they would do that. But Jenny and I were discussing yesterday on the Sustainer call when at one point it was just her and I, and while Derek was putting his 1-year-old daughter, she celebrated her first birthday yesterday. So,
congratulations to his daughter.
Derek's
I didn't
daughter.
say it on the Sustainer call because I missed that part of it.
Well, at one point she and I were discussing about why we don't necessarily love Ironborn chapters. And it's because it's really hard and scary to get into the minds and the world of the Ironborn because they're such ruthless group of people.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I got nothing to add. You're absolutely right. I mean, they are violent monsters, and
right.
And that's one of the reasons why I think Asha could never really rule them, because Asha's like them and she supports them and she wants the same things as them, but she's a woman. And what happened today with the Lord Hewitt's family, Asha might have said, let's not do that.
I would hope, but I don't know. She was indoctrinated into the same world that they were, so I would like to hope that she is above that, but I can't say for sure.
But then again, if she is above it and she does stop that kind of thing, then that's the reason she's going to clash with the Ironborn constantly, because that's what they want to do.
True. Yeah, I mean, the treatment of the Hewitts, I don't know how it would have gone if Folly of Flowers, who is Humphrey Hewitt's bastard daughter, I don't know how the treatment of them would have gone without her influence, but she seems to be reveling in the humiliation of her stepmother and her stepsisters.
She's like a much grimmer version of Cinderella.
Kind of, yeah. You're right. Yeah, now, she was made to be a servant by, I assume, by her stepmom. It's never specifically said, but what's she gonna do? I mean, really, she doesn't. She's powerless as well, but yeah. She's whispering
exactly.
things.
That's why I ad-libbed. It was her own humiliation. I mean, what's happening to her is no better than what's happening to the other Hewitt women.
Right.
She's just embracing it as if it was her choice.
Yeah. I mean, it shows you that Jon is not an isolated incident for bastards raised in the castle of their father.
True.
Probably a similar situation for Jon, him being a servant, if Ned was not so insistent that Jon be treated better and raised with his siblings. Yeah.
We mentioned that Euron's doing a decent job sort of strategically of buying loyalty, the treasure from Essos, and now these strategic lordships. So talk me through all 4 of them. There's 4 Shield Islands, and we've got 4 new lords.
Well, 3 of them make sense. So we've got Sir Harris Harlaw, who was Roderick's heir, because Roderick the Reader has no sons. Remember, he offered Harlaw Castle to Asha if she would stay away from the Kingsmoot and not put in a claim for herself. Sir Harris was supposed to be his heir. Now he is Lord. He's become a lord, and Harlow, Humpback, is now Roderick's heir.
But is that true? I mean, if you're given a lordship of a lesser thing than you already have, that you're already heir to, can you not have them both?
Well, that's true. Or possibly, why would he want this if he's already in line to be heir to Harlaw?
Right. I mean, maybe he's young and ambitious and wants something now. I can sort of see that. But it does kind of lend credence to your idea that Euron is planning to abandon these people to their fate and let them die, because then that becomes a much more significant loss for Roderick. He could still have Harris as his heir. I think.
Yeah, he could. When Roderick dies, Harris could become, Lord of Harlaw and go back to the Iron Islands. Yeah, you're right. The next one is Andric the Unsmiling, and he was Dustin Drum's right hand. Dustin Drum, he made a case for King of the Iron Islands. He was the one that started off really strong and then
droned on.
Yes,
I remember.
He droned on for too long. Well, Andric the Unsmiling is kind of his,
you would have voted for him, wouldn't you?
And then we get Newt the Barber, who is Victarion's lieutenant. His right hand man.
And that's a significant promotion. That's like, I've gone from being lieutenant on Victarion's ship to being a lord? Heck yeah. Yes. You can't talk me out of that, Victarion.
Which he tried to do. He said, he was thinking, Euron's gifts are always poisoned. This is bad. Yeah. Don't take it. But Newt the Barber was like, are you kidding me? Are you going to make me a lord? I think not.
Right.
So, those three make sense because they are all three seasoned, well-known, well-respected captains on the Iron Islands. And like we've discussed, they're also very important to Euron's biggest rivals, or some of his biggest rivals. But then there's Meryn Volmark, and you might think, why? He's like a teenage
he's 16.
Boy. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And Victarion tells us pretty much that, he's given Green Shield. Meryn is given Green Shield because he has Black Heron's blood from his mother's side. And we talked about this at the Kingsmoot chapter, I believe, that Meryn Volmark is the heir to the Black Line of House Hoare. The Black Line, being the name for House Hoare. They were once the king of the Iron Islands, and Black Heron was the architect and developer of Harrenhal.
Yes.
And back, I think it was the Kingsmoot chapter, might have been previous Ironborn chapter, but Tarl Thrice-Drowned proclaimed that Meryn had the best claim to the Seastone Chair because of his Black Heron's blood.
Right. So yeah, it definitely, and that one isn't weakening anybody else.
Right.
It's simply getting him out of the way, which again leads even more credence to the idea that these guys are going to be left to their own devices and they are going to flounder and die.
Yeah.
And Euron's position will be bolstered thereby.
You're right. The more we look at it, his original plan does fit with what his original plan might have been. I'm going to leave these four and they're going to get wiped out because I don't care about these Shield Islands. Really, I'm going to take all of Westeros.
Yeah, we're not going up the Mander. Why do we need the Shield Islands?
Right, we're going to fly right into King's Landing. So, to change subjects, so Euron mentions to Victarion.
That's usually my thing, Kelly.
To say change subjects?
Basically, I get tired of what you're talking about, and I change subjects. But go on. It was exciting to hear you do it.
Let's change subjects to Euron's dreams, because everybody loves to hear about other people's dreams.
Heck yeah.
So Euron mentions to Victarion that as a boy he dreamed he could fly. And that might sound a bit familiar to the rest of us.
Are we talking Brandon Stark?
Brandon Stark. He's also had a dream where he was, mostly he was falling gracefully for a while.
Can we push Euron out of a high building?
Right.
Why didn't Victarion just do that this chapter?
Well, he
Save
did
us
say
a lot of trouble.
He was talking about you never know until you jump. And Victarion says, "Well, there's a window right there, so why don't you have at it?
I'm at it.
Let's see how it goes."
But that whole scene put me in mind of Bill Hicks, who had a joke about kids who do drugs and they think they can fly and they jump out of tall buildings. He's like, those kids are really stupid. I mean, I get that they were high, but if you think you can fly, try from the ground.
Right, yeah, let's try just jumping and see if... Oh, gosh, yeah. But many in the fandom think that this line here, that he, as a boy, dreamed he could fly, implies that Euron was once targeted by the three-eyed crow, like Bran has been targeted by the three-eyed crow. Wow. And some even believe that he's a warg like Bran, which, with the whole crow's eye thing, maybe he can warg into a crow. Some people think.
You think the three-eyed crow sort of like pokes his nose into sort of like various, second sons to see if they're potential. And with Euron, he went, oh, God, no, what a lunatic, and left him.
I never thought about the second son connection. Yeah, there's that, too. Yeah. Well, remember when Bran was falling, not really flying at this point, he was still falling, he saw the bodies of thousands of dreamers around the spires that he was falling toward. And then the crow said, you gotta fly or you're gonna fall. And Bran managed to fly, and so possibly Euron failed the flying test, although he literally said he dreamed he was flying, not I dreamed I was falling. So anyway, just some thoughts that readers have had over the years.
Euron also claims that he held a dragon's egg and threw it into the sea when he was in a bad mood. I mean, honestly, that sounds crazy. They're priceless, and Euron is, he's in it for himself, but he is a lunatic, so possibly true as well.
Yeah, it's right up there with sailing the smoking sea. He could be lying. And also, maybe he is unhinged enough to toss a priceless dragon egg into the sea just because he's grumpy.
Imagine if he did that just the day before he got hold of the horn that could wake up dragons. He'd be like, no!
We're backtracking. We're going back to that spot. So I posed the question on our Buy Me a Coffee channel of our Discord server. Do you believe that this really happened? And I think at last check, it was just Jenny and I that were involved in the conversation about it. And we had both heard this other idea from the fandom that Euron used this egg to pay for the faceless man that killed Balon, if you believe
he tossed it into
happened.
The sea metaphorically.
Right. But also, if he says he sailed the smoking sea into Valyria, if he did, possibly he found a dragon egg while he was there. So, maybe that's how he acquired this dragon egg.
Every time he drinks the shade of the evening, I think he sails the smoking sea, if you know what I mean.
So, yeah, that one line has caused much discussion.
So Victarion's going on a journey, it seems, and maybe we'll get a connection between POV characters if he does get to meet Daenerys. And
it'd be nice. We were actually...
Well, it would, except Victarion's suit is going to be extremely pathetic, I think. He's going to go up there and he'd be like, basically, I'm a Reaver. I'm fourth in line to the throne. I've already failed once to take it. And I got no way to control your dragons. Will you be mine?
Well, he's bringing the horn with him, so
he's going to take the horn with him. Okay, good.
He could give it a shot and see how it goes. Yeah. I'm not sure how receptive she would be to the idea of, watch, I'm going to try and steal your dragons from you.
Right. Maybe that's the trick, because everybody knows what happens when you blow that horn to the blower. So no one's going to want to do it. So it's all sort of like an empty threat. If we choose to blow this horn, which we're not going to do, we would have control of your dragons.
But don't make me do it. You don't want me to do it. But now it would be nice to have some POV in our story that is connected with Dany. She's been such an outlier for thus far through the story. It would be nice to have someone else that's interacting with her.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, it's time for spoilers. If you join us at the higher tiers of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer levels, you can hear what we're about to discuss. All right, good spoilers. Thank you so much. What about some background?
All right, well, Victarion tells us of how the Ironborn once had free reign to sail the Mander and plunder as they pleased until the Greenland kings armed the fisherfolk on the islands at the mouth of the river and named them his shield. At the time, the islands were called the Misty Islands. However, the king renamed them the Shield Islands and populated them with his best sailors and fighters. This king was King Garth the Seventh Gardener. Remember how Jaime toyed with the idea of being called Golden Hand?
Yes.
Well, Garth the Seventh was the original Golden Hand, although it, as best I can tell, it did seem that he had two perfectly normal working hands.
Okay.
So it wasn't for the same reasons as Jaime.
Touch of the jaundice?
Maybe. He is considered the greatest king of the Reach. He began his reign as a 12-year-old, and right off the bat, he had to squash a Dornish invasion of the Reach, and then shortly after, he turned his attention to the Mander and the Ironborn pirates. He drove the Ironborn out of the Misty Islands and then set them up as the Shield Islands, as I already mentioned. His most notable achievement on the battlefield was not only defending against a two-pronged attack from the Storm King and the King of the Rock, who had hoped to split the Reach between them, but he actually managed to turn the pair against each other, and the two ultimately ended up fighting amongst themselves. Then Garth VII married his daughters to the king's sons and secured peace along the Reach's borders.
Smart.
Yeah. All that said, what's considered his greatest achievement was the years of peace and prosperity during his reign. For about 75 years, the Reach prospered in peace. The era is known as the Golden Reign, where the Reach flowered like never before or after. The boy whose reign began at 12 ruled for 81 years, dying at 93. His body failed him, but his mind never lost its sharpness.
Interesting. Thank you so much. Compared with the television show, there's nothing really to compare here. I mean, this battle didn't happen. Victarion barely exists in the show. Euron definitely has designs around the Iron Throne, but there's no horn. There's no plan to. There doesn't seem to. I don't remember a plan to marry Dany. So just not captured at all, basically. Pedantry. I don't have any pedantry either. I there were some things, but as we discussed them tonight, they sort of fell into place. Like the whole, taking it just to leave. Well,
right.
We actually sort of justified that now. Like maybe he was plotting this. Yeah.
Right.
News and notes. Solve last week's mystery for us, Scooby.
Right. So I do have more on the mystery that was George Martin's missing blog post. As a quick reminder, George Martin wrote a post on August 30th that mentioned all that's gone wrong with House of the Dragon. He then wrote a post called Beware of Butterflies that was then taken down. That's the one I was talking about last week. Well, the post has yet to go back up. However, enough people read it to get the gist of what was said, and then Carter, in our Discord community, found a text file containing the contents of the post. So, our surmising from last week was actually pretty close, and now, I must say, spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about things that are
in House of the Dragons and future House of the Dragons.
Yes, I'm going to try to limit spoiling what's going to happen in future House of the Dragon, but I am going to spoil what's already happened in House of the Dragon. So, here I go. It shouldn't take me too long. If you just want to skip like 30 seconds, you'll probably get to the next piece there. Okay, so basically to summarize what George Martin's post was about, he was disappointed in how the blood and cheese scene played out on House of the Dragon. In Fire and Blood, Helena is asked to pick which child dies, and she picks the younger brother, Maelor, and they kill the heir, Jaehaerys. So it was sort of a Helena's choice situation. She also offers her own life for her children's lives. In the show, however, she offers them jewelry, and they reject the jewelry, and they just kill Jaehaerys. Martin was bothered by the lack of Maelor Targaryen altogether. The character doesn't exist. He's the youngest son of Helena and Aegon, and Maelor has a role to play in Helena's future story arc. So here's where the butterfly effect comes into play, because without him, Martin struggles to see how they pull off a major point in her story arc. He also said there are larger and more butterflies to come if what he knows is true about season 3 and season 4.
Yeah, now you've said it, I do actually remember that part of the book, and it is true, that was different. And I can see how, because there was a sort of psychological aspect to being picked by your mother to die and then not dying. Yes.
Now, of course, Maelor is a baby. He's 2, so he himself might not, he won't remember that.
No.
But his mother will remember.
Oh, yeah.
That she picked him to die.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
And, Martin pointed out in his post that non-book readers, just show watchers, they thought it was a great scene. They had nothing to compare it to, and he felt it was well-directed and well-acted. He just worries about these issues.
He's entitled to
butterflies.
Yep. There's a new way that you can help us out. The podcast app Pocket Cast now allows ratings. So if you're using it to listen to us, please consider giving us a 5-star rating there. Even if you've already given us a 5-star rating elsewhere, we will take them all. As always, it's just a few seconds of your time. It means a great deal to both of us.
That it does.
All right, let's conclude this one. The Ironborn have begun their invasion of Westeros with the smallest of bites of the whole cookie, the Shield Islands, which heretofore I did not know existed.
That's how small bite it is. It's odd timing, though, isn't it? There's no sign of dragons to the rescue. They haven't even begun the journey to Essos to acquire the dragons. So why? What would the plan be that would involve, hey, let's attack one of the most powerful regions of Westeros when we don't have dragons to back it up?
Yeah. Well, there's definitely a chaos factor. And there's definitely a give the Ironborn what they want factor.
Yes.
And
there
now,
you go. Right.
Courtesy of our discussion, we've also got the rid ourselves of our turbulent internal enemies while we're at it factor.
Right. Yes. And I think the second bit there, the bit about give the Ironborn a taste of plunder and victory, I'm sure that must factor in because they seemed very excited about
exactly.
it. And they so excited, they forgot about the dragons in the first place. Well, they only wanted golden dragons.
Yes. Yeah. And there definitely seems to be some murmurings of buyer's remorse about choosing Euron. The idea of real dragons and the sound of that horn were all very exciting at the King's Moot, but the reality is there's a continent to pillage right here.
Yes.
And it seems that the western half of it is pretty much devoid of troops and fleets to stop you. So have at it. Right. Make hay. I mean,
and hey, you and I know that Cersei might very well reward Euron herself for causing trouble for the Tyrells.
Very true.
But Aaron has gone off to raise an army to oppose Euron. Now, his plan is to use the small folk, and surely there are many more small folk than there are captains, but they also have less at their...
Yeah, and I will say, if I was Euron, you were talking about how long it'll be before he comes home, and by that time, Aaron might have a sting in store for him. Never go home. I mean, just keep doing what you're doing. You're the king of the pirates. Enjoy yourself,
Yeah, you're right. Maybe his original plan, it sure seems like he wasn't planning on coming home without dragons. And if he was coming back to Westeros with dragons, pretty sure he wasn't going to stop at Pike first to check the mail.
Exactly. This is a 3-year journey if you come back to Pike with the dragons on your mast. But that's not where he's headed with these guys.
And even if you come back, even if you stop at Pike first to check the mail, you've got dragons. Those small folk are gonna, they're gonna charge at you until they see the dragons, and then they're gonna turn around and run. So you're right. Maybe he couldn't care less about this plan.
But Victarion, I mean, we never thought he was going to be the greatest candidate for King of the Iron Islands, but he's a heck of a soldier, and you wouldn't want to face him in battle. That's for sure.
Yeah, he mentions that obedience comes easily, and he doesn't care for speeches or I mean. He doesn't. do you remember at the King's Moot, one of the things we criticized about his plan is that he had no original ideas.
Let's keep doing what Balon said.
Did you like what Balon was doing? Well, I'm going to keep on doing it. So, like I said at the beginning of our discussion, don't promote him out of what he does best.
Yeah.
Although, I will say he would still be a superior king to Euron. And I still hold the idea that maybe Asha was the best choice out of them all.
His reflection on how poor of a choice he would have been makes it all the more galling that he didn't side with Asha, If he put his own weight behind Asha, she could have held on, perhaps. But there we are.
Possibly.
Well, next time we have a Jaime chapter, and they're always fun. So, in the meantime, there's 3 ways that you can help us. You could leave us a positive review, including on Pocket Cast. You could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhall. There you can join us at any of the various sustainer levels. There's a tier to match your budget and interest, and the upper tiers get you the spoilers. Or you can make a donation directly to our cause at ghostsofharrenhall.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, well, first off, you can send us a text. The link is at the top of every episode's show notes. And if you're looking to keep up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, you can check us out on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.